Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing? Good, a single good. Let's get a practice with a round of applause going. How are we all doing, guys? There we go. Not too many hungover people here on a Saturday afternoon. Guys, I want to welcome you all here to the next session of the Irish Writers' Weekend. The British Library have asked me to introduce. So my name is Joe O'Neill. Fantastic, you're doing great. And I'm the founder of the Irish Creative Collective. The Irish Creative Collective, for anyone who doesn't know, is a company that I set up 2.5 years ago, which is dedicated to bringing together, supporting and showcasing Irish creatives in London. We do it through a monthly meetup night, and we do a monthly showcase event. This is going to be another round of applause, guys, just so you know. Just preparing you, the only monthly showcase event of Irish creatives in the world. I have done no research on that, but I keep saying it, and no one has proved me wrong yet, all right? If you want to be involved, like I said, check us out on Instagram at Irish Creative Collective. We do events all the time, and we're here to showcase the best of the best, which is anyone who's Irish. That's our demographic. But thanks so much. So the next session is comedy writing with the wonderful Dara Briain. And the wonderful Caroline O'Donoghue. Like the whoop, let's do it for the last one as well, and they'll be in conversation with the wonderful Séamas Riley. There we go. Before we start, I would like to thank, on behalf of the British Library, for the support in the Irish Writers' Weekend from Culture Ireland. There we go. The Embassy of Ireland in London, and the Doyle Collection Hotel Group. There we go. Thank you so much, guys. Keep the applause going, big, 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 and welcome onto the stage your amazing panel.
So far away.
I sort of feel he's there and we're here.
It does feel like I should be.
Yeah, it does feel like you should be there. Feels very COVID regulations, doesn't it?
Yeah. We wrote a little farce for you before we came out to show that we're actual pros. Thanks so much for coming out. It's a real pleasure and thrill for me to talk about comedy writing and to do that with my two wonderful guests. I think we're going to talk a little bit about how comedy writing works, particularly in an Irish context, and get into that deeper stuff. But I thought maybe we'd start with the absolute basics. When did you think, or discover, realize that you were funny, or that being funny was a priority?
I'll hand this over to the professional comedian who's been on telly.
I'll hover. Look, there's no answer to that which will top that of Ardlo Hanlon, who was asked that a lot in interviews and then honed it down to the government sent me a letter when I was 11. The more serious answer is I don't think you ever necessarily presume you are, but you want to be. In the sense that you envy other people doing it, or you desire. I'd like to get that reaction. Certainly, because look, the whole thing I'll hide over this is that when I do it within a very immediate context. Whereas when you guys do it, like it's in that kind of a slightly kind of reflected or refracted kind of way. You get certainly as a performer, the performer thing was. I'd like to be out there, and I'd like to get that love immediately. So that urge, whether that's a psychological flaw or an emotional damage that's been corrected, and I genuinely mean that seriously. But it was when I was in university, and I told jokes at a debate, and I got a laugh, and I went, oh Christ, that was nice. And then from there on in, it was chasing that high since I was 19. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 33 years. Yeah. 33 years chasing the same high.
Caroline, what's your trauma?
My trauma is that my older brother is 14 months older than me and was 6'4" at age 14. And what that means is that everybody you know wants to sleep with your brother. Because that's what height means in your world. You know all about it, obviously.
Yeah, constantly having people want to sleep with.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily my experience. No. Yeah. No.
I mean, I'm getting the flutters. So.
Yeah. Oh well, that's reassuring to know. But no. Sorry. The other thing that I went into was because socially quite awkward, and then you get to be the kind of king of the room in comedy. Like you get to be the person holding the mic, get to be the person in the thing, and that felt like an achievable and pleasant situation to be in. So yeah. So weirdly, I'm the like whatever. I had the height, but clearly, whatever your brother also had, a little thing that he had,
a little bit of pizzazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was this thing where it's like because he was my next oldest, and there was 4 of us all together, and I was the baby, and it felt like if you wanted to be heard in that family at all, you had to either be really mean or really funny, and ideally mean and funny. So I've been trying to get a laugh ever since, kind of thing, really. But you know, I think that's why it has taken the form of novels rather than any other kind of creative format, because it's like you feel completely talked over, overshadowed, like you don't matter. Like, not that my family aren't lovely, they are, but like you just feel like the only place you can be yourself is in your private little page, kind of thing. And I think that was that's my trauma. Yeah.
Well, you're describing I mean, were they a funny family? Sarcastic.
You're going to come for me now because you're like, four siblings, double that and then some with this guy over here.
Well, your parents didn't get on, or? That's my one joke I tell all the time. Until Tommy Bow completely ruined my life and that.
Yeah.
So, humour then in your family was like a currency. It was something that you all exchanged.
Definitely, and like there was always this kind of sort of sharpness was a real thing that everybody valued. And again, being the baby, I never sort of knew the line, and I got in trouble for this a lot, and I still get in trouble with this a lot. Like I remember everyone was sitting around the dinner table and just being like super like Joan Rivers-y. And then
insult comics.
Real insult comics, and everyone was really going for it or whatever. And then I just kind of blurted. I'm about 10 at this point. I just blurted out with, "Yeah, what about Auntie Anne's Parkinson's?" and my dad just looked at me and just went, "You're extremely cruel." I think every day since then I've been trying to negotiate the line between being a total cow and Joan Rivers.
I mean, my family, my siblings definitely were very funny, very sarcastic, and still are to this day. But it seemed to just come from the ether, because my dad's not a funny man deliberately. He's only ever told one joke. The only joke he's ever told was, he must have heard it on the radio or something. I can't believe he came up with something this good. But he was reversing the car and he said, "Oh, this takes me back." And I was like...
That's good, clean fun. No one gets hurt.
Such good, clean fun. And like, that's it. That was his one. Like one day in 1997, he decided he was going to tell a joke. But in my family, I am, of course, one of 11. And that was completely the thing, was trying to be heard, trying to fight your way through the velociraptor pit. And so that's where it came from for me. And I would go to other friends' houses and realize, oh, they don't do that necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, what was it like for you, Dara?
I was one of 2.
Oh.
And so, frankly, we had all the airtime we needed. We were very, very loved, very cherished. We felt very secure in our family plan. No, so it wasn't that. That wasn't a thing. I wasn't bullied at school because I was giant, and none of those kind of things. It was just that I was shy. And then when I went to the university, I tried a thing, and I found that I could do things, and I enjoyed the pleasure of being confident, I suppose, because I hated being an adolescent. So honestly, many of the choices I've made, particularly this one, are a reaction to that 5 or 6 years or whatever of just feeling awkward and gauche, and going, everything I say is useless, and like when you're 15 kind of thing. The anecdote I try to explain to people, I used to get a bus from Briain into school, which took about 20, 30, 40 minutes, depending on as traffic built up in Dublin over the years. And I remember I would sit beside somebody and the conversation would falter, and I would go, "Oh," and I'd feel it and go, "Oh my God, I'm so bad at this. I cannot sustain a conversation. Nothing is being said here. This is really, really awkward." And I would die, so in just like that kind of teenage way. And then there was a genuine moment, I think, in 6th year in school, where I'm sitting in the bus and conversation faltered, and I went, "Do you know what? This fucker doesn't offer much in conversation." and realised it was their fault. They were they were the non-talk.
Such a powerful realization.
And then so they went, "Oh wait, all this time I've been tying my self-worth to this person's inability inability to sustain a conversation. And so I remember that, and then going into university being a period of just reinvention and all that kind of stuff, and just going, okay, great, I'm gonna go. And so that gave a jolt of energy to just being able to talk confidently. And I enjoyed it. But after being awkward, whatever. I told a joke, I told a gag in a freshers debate in second year. I didn't do anything in the first year. There was a bit of a hangover. In second year, I did the maiden speakers competition, and I told a joke in UCD about they'd moved the law faculty to a different place, and I said, thanks to everyone who's been here, particularly the students from law who've travelled so far to be with us today. That got a big laugh because it's a real in-joke on the campus. It got a huge laugh and a round of applause from the 20 people who were there, and a dial went off in me that I had never known existed, like a kind of a buzzer went off, and I went, oh, and like a jolt of adrenaline from that, like whatever and so that started, you can do that. And to the extent that I started then, seeing that as an animal that I can use for my own enjoyment. Yeah. See,
an animal I can use for my own enjoyment.
Yeah, I get the impression that the more I talk and the more you talk, the more I'm going to come across as a slightly weird psychopath who has no human emotions for these people here, but sees them as a different kind of beast.
As a means to an end.
Yeah, and as an entity, as an organic being themselves, and all these, like very quickly, like a group of people are just a different animal. And you can pet that animal in a way that they will respond back to you, and you will get a validation. And so, yes, began to see these things entirely. I read the way you're both looking at me is really fucking worrying. It's got, yeah.
No, the reason it's great is because you said something before we started which broke my brain, and I think it speaks to that, where part of the process that we were just describing, where you write down our little things on our little page, I get to write something down and really enjoy it, whatever else. But it can be a year or year and a half or 2 years before that reaches an audience, and they might not like it or whatever. You said to me that you literally do not write down your jokes at any stage of the process. So any show that if I go to watch you for an hour at the Albert Hall or wherever, none of that will ever have been written down at any point. No.
When we say written down, I don't mean word for word, typed out, here is a script that I have done, here is a final version of what it is. That will never happen for stand-up. And I think for a lot of us, you write down the topic, maybe the nub of it, you think about it, like whatever, but you have a keyword, and then it becomes it's just a verbal process. So you just say it. You say it over and over again. You do small gigs. You try saying it. You have a list of names of the jokes, essentially, and then you just say them out, and a pleasing form, you start repeating it, and then you start repeating it, and then it hones that way. So by the end of a tour, for example, it will have a shape and a form, but no one will ever have written down, and I will say this word. I mean, there may be one-liner comics who really focus on getting the exact wording right. That's not what I'm doing. I'm telling stories really more than enough, but I never actually write the thing out. And in comparison with this entire weekend of writers do, I find, that's why I'm the slight black sheep of this, like whatever, I find, and I've written 4 books now, either for kids or for adults, I find the act of writing, as it's known, like writing for page, to be incredibly dull. It's very, very satisfying.
And yet you've done it 4 times.
4 times, yes. Well, you get paid. But actually, no, the result is great. Yeah. When you hold it in your hand and you see the thing, you go see the effect it's had, that's lovely. But the actual process of doing that, the writing the does and ofs and ands, is stuff you never ever have to do. And it feels every time like a tiny death, because you're limiting on each word you put down, you're limiting where it can go, and you're setting it in stone, like I'm chiseling it or something like that. But it feels like that narrows the thing down. Whereas in stand-up, it's constantly sort of fluid, and you're sort of open to it changing, even halfway through a tour. Even 100. There was one routine I had years ago about what's it called, Dr. Bear, and what's the name of that class? Antenatal classes that had 2 sections to it. And on gig 148, I realised, if I take the 2 sections and swap them, it's a better routine. It actually balances better. You're constantly looking for that and hoping that that'll change and evolve. Like the notion of what you guys do, and most everything here, is where you create a thing which is set, and there it is. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. We're not in the same game, except for the thing that we want to create that reaction. We want to jolt people into, ha ha ha. Like that's interesting. We're going at it from a totally different thing, though.
I think there is a sense, though, because when you are, if I find anyway, when I'm writing funny prose, that I'm doing it mostly to amuse myself because the job is so boring, and it is so dull. And like to expect somebody to laugh with a book is a ridiculous expectation, because like humans aren't meant to laugh alone. Like it's like that chimp thing of like we're all together showing our teeth to each other is fun, but like the idea of like ha ha ha, like at a book is mad. So I think, I don't know if you feel this way, Séamas, but like you very rarely get somebody coming up to you at a book signing saying to you, you know, I loved that joke on page 30.
Yeah.
They just say, I love your book, or I loved that bit.
I wish they would say
I
they
wish
loved that
would,
joke.
God's sake.
Because presumably you do the same thing that I do if I'm doing. The most contrived writing we do is if we're doing something like The Last Leg or whatever, where they say we are talking about X topic, and you go, oh God, I better find, you know, a comparison that works in this, like, or a joke or whatever. But when you're doing it, like, you are going, oh God, what would be a good analogy? And they say, what's a good? There are lines you obviously go, she entered the room like a, and you kind of go, well, I'm going to have to think of a funny comparison here. It would be nice if people were to say, I liked I like that line, because it's work. It's like, it's, you, in a sense, you have to, okay, I have to try a number of different ones until I find the one that feels.
Or sometimes it's the other way around. I'll find an analogy of like, God, I can't wait to meet someone that fits. because of like that, the one that people have mentioned to me several times is my granny. Every picture I ever saw of my granny, she looked very stern. She looked like Martin Scorsese in drag, basically. she had incredibly fiery white eyebrows, white hair. There are pictures of her where she must be 36 years old and she looks 900. And I was trying to come up what would be a funny way to put across just how stern, how comically, hilariously stern she looks, because I'm not going to put pictures in the book. And I finally came up with, she looked like the sort of person who would keep her arms folded on a trampoline. And that was like, it took me days and days. I just had it like, well, she looks very stern, but I put it in square brackets, and occasionally we'll go back, what's a better alt for that? And like you were saying, to keep the juice going when you're writing, because it's so dull. Sometimes I'll go back to some square brackets. I'll say, what's something she could be? And that is like that elation. But that's the first time I've ever heard anyone laugh at that joke. Because even the people who spotted it, they come and said, oh, I love that bit. All right, bye, that's it. So I envy so much that you get to have the immediate feedback. Because that's what it is, it's a physical response.
And that's a great line. And I would do that line, it would get a laugh, and I would take the rest of the day off, because I know I have that. That's a brick that goes in the show. Like I mean, it would be interesting if you to measure out exactly how many lines I had to come up with for a show, like actually how many beats of funny versus a book. And therefore, who is using their time more efficiently? There might be a way of working that out. But yeah, I mean, any one of those is a and like we still come up with stuff in sections. That's in comedy, unfortunately, it tends to arrive. I presume literature does this as well. I haven't written long-form fiction. That you think of bits and then you try to order them into something that, like, so in many ways, people, it should read organic, but it really wasn't, because you had a funny line about a trampoline. Well, how can I build to that and from that? Because that's such a great line. Like and presumably that, you know, or you have a set piece of dialogue that you think that you can overheard, where you go, like, how can I slot that in to something? So it actually works. Like whatever in a way that we had a conversation about seeing the joins. Yeah. And I'm wondering, are there more joins when you're writing comedy than there are if you're writing?
So I've had this experience before, and certainly in my last book, where I thought I was writing a scene that was hilarious, and then when I read it back, I was like, this is very sad. So the scene I wrote was like, there's one of the main character is pregnant, spoilers, but her boyfriend, she's doing kind of a long distance thing with, doesn't know, and so he's sort of like, well, should we, try phone sex kind of thing. And then they start going into the sort of like sexy librarian play on the phone. And she's been like, I'm not just a librarian, I'm a librarian with a secret. And the secret is, I'm pregnant. and then it just kind of devolves from there. And then eventually when the scene gets to its natural end, and he says, sorry, this is getting too gross now. I think I should stop. But he sort of says, I really want it in you. And she's there going, well, you did, and that's why we're in this problem.
So you only realise when you look back, oh, well, am I working something out here?
I had that with Portnoy's Complaint, which is legendary comedy
Roth.
novel, by Roth. It read sad to me the whole way through. And this is, I haven't read it in 25 years or whatever. I might go back and have another read of it. But I remember reading it and it read very effectively sad. It read like this is a very beautifully written, sad book about a man who's sexually obsessed with various people. But with his mother and all the kind of... Did not see it as comedy at all.
Yeah.
Just saw it as... This is a poignant novel about a Jewish intellectual who can't get over the love of his mother. And so I think it's very easy to flip that, particularly in a book, because the context isn't set by... It's not somebody standing on stage, doing jazz hands and welcoming you in and going and setting the tone for it, which is very easy to do when you're a stand-up. Like, you can set the tone for a thing just by how you say it.
Well, this is my big sort of bugbear in literature at the moment, is that how many times I have picked up a book that the blurb says, darkly funny, a real riot. And then you, like, page 3, the lead character is thinking of killing themselves.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. Even some of David Sedaris, who's probably the most famous living humorist.
Humorist,
Which is probably
humorist is a really funny
humorist,
one.
It's an excellent one, that, because Sedaris was a lot funnier and it has become less funny. Either because there's less jokes or because the tone is slightly shifted because he got older. But I think his stuff is less easy to go, ha ha. Oh, he put...
The prose itself is way more beautiful, but it's less funny.
And he brings more of a sadness about his mother's alcoholism or whatever into it, and it weighs down on, I can't just enjoy the frothy you and your husband antiquing stuff, like whatever, because you're going to draw a poignant life lesson from this, I know, towards the end, like whatever. I find Sedaris' stuff has gone from, hey, I used to travel around the place and do, stuff.
Yeah, I used to be a Christmas elf, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, in a list of things that aren't funny but people think they're funny, many plays that people laugh at.
Many plays.
Knives are right, let's go.
Plays.
Yeah. Well, no, do you know the way you get... There's a laugh that you get in a theatre that...
Yes.
Yeah.
The sensible chuckle.
Yeah, exactly. That comedians go, fuck me, you should hear my stuff. If you're doing this
Stand up
that,
at the back of the
whatever, people shouting funny things at Wimbledon, that kind of stuff. Like people shouting just, come on, Tim, when somebody else is playing, and it gets that laugh. Stuff which cheaply bursts attention but isn't actually funny. There's loads of those.
Can I add some of those?
Yeah.
I hate, oh God, I'm going to get angry now. I hate compound swears like wank puffin and spunk trumpet.
Yes.
The sort of vaguely kind of like middle of the road kind of we're being shocking but not quite shocking stuff. It's like they're counterfeit swear words.
Right.
It's like whenever you buy a Rolex on the beach in like the Algarve. It's like, it's not actually swearing. It's not, I think Armando Iannucci did it so well and Chris Morris did it so well that it's kind of all of these little imitators, and anytime I see one of them, I feel absolutely murderous.
I'm gonna, plus one that hate that. Also hate any form of wordplay or puns.
At all?
I hate them all. There's something that's very, and when I say English humour, I don't mean any of you. And I don't mean Cockneys, and I don't mean like Geordies. I don't mean that. I mean this form of sort of like Sunday supplement, Hay Literary Festival humour kind of thing that's very, it feels like aristocrats standing up by the fireplace doing a cryptic sort of kind of thing. Like, I'm going to the Wodehouse Prize next week because I've been nominated, which is very nice. But I would rather die than read one of those books.
Really? I do actually love Wodehouse.
I just the Jeeves stuff, just sort of, I don't know, I can't do it.
I think growing up in Derry during the Troubles, I had an inner secret posho.
Really?
That I wanted.
I'm one of you.
Because I would read those and I'd be like, this is totally against my entire worldview. But God, what a sparkling bon mot he's just unraveled. I think there's obviously layers to it because I think the idea of that is, to me, more unpleasant than the actual execution. Because if you do it well, anything could be good, you know? Like you might not, that type of humour wouldn't be mine, but whenever you see an excellent practitioner, you have to hold, I personally have to hold my hands up. Which gets to another question, which is, do you read a lot of funny stuff? Do you seek it out? Is it like something that you would gravitate towards, is finding?
Yeah, but again, it would have to be recommended by somebody who
you thought was funny.
Who I thought was funny, because like you cannot trust those blurbs. I definitely, your work obviously hilarious, very good.
You can stop there.
Yeah.
I find the humour section of a book, of most bookshops, sort of depressing.
Very sad, yeah.
Because it's all like...
Everyone wants to kill themselves on page 3.
Yeah, but it's because it's a lot of 101. It's not anymore, but it was a lot of 101 uses for a dead hedgehog, or the funny graffiti, or those kind of books in bathrooms kind of thing. I do remember the time that I discovered David Sedaris in one of these things, because I would constantly go and maybe I'll find some writer who's doing great short form, you know, funny stuff like that, and something will pop up that's incredible. But very rarely is there, you know, it's tough to find, you know, that kind of stuff, because it gets buried in a lot of, you know, just cheap tie-in kind of things, like whatever, and you know.
I mean, we're so lucky as Irish people that there are so many great, funny novelists. Like, I still think all the time about this bit in one of Marion Keyes's books, Rachel's Holiday, where she talks about this gang of lads that she knows that they have a pair of leather pants that they share between them, and like, and just every weekend the girls go to the pub to like make guesses on who's going to be wearing the pants this week, and just like that to me is just like good honest fun. I just love that.
Well, I think that's a really good segue into, I think, a main thing I wanted to discuss, which is I think Irish writers have more license and more opportunity to be funny, even in quote-unquote serious literary works. I think maybe my theory is that in Ireland, a much higher social premium is put on being funny, or perhaps a much higher social penalty is put on not being funny.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, I don't know if it's to do with maybe us not being a landed nation, you know, people not carrying like excessive wealth, and so you had to get by it. You know, the bardic tradition and stories, whatever. I've heard loads of different theories. Why this?
Everyone's got their own little theory. What's your little theory?
I have. I don't hold with any of them, but I've definitely used the bardic one in a while. I've talked about how the bards would go from town to town, and they'd write a satire in E, and that would be it would condemn the chieftain, and the chieftain knew that the bardic poets were the ones with all the real power. It's fucking horseshit, I'd imagine. You'd run a sword through a poet. They're down like the grand. I also have developed a kind of in a no puns kind of thing, resistance to our tendency. I think what the Irish people are unique in, our tendency to talk of ourselves as if we're unique, and to self-mythologize ourselves, and isn't it amazing the way we do things. Certainly in terms of style and range of different types of comedy, we got nothing on here. Absolutely, and we do a lot of storytellers. Who's got 2 thumbs, and a lot of people just do make observation. But in terms of like surreality or sketch or drama or all the kind of like the stuff that was in a whole industry of comedy here, this has far outstripped what we were doing in Ireland. And and I think we do have a tendency. Sorry, not to hold your question under the waterline from the minute it was asked, like whatever. To talk about
self-mythologize.
To self-mythologize ourselves a little bit about this, like there are things we do very well. And the things that I prefer our style to other people's style. And if I'm just talking stand-up, for example, I find, you know, traditionally American stand-up shies away from the kind of long-form stories that we do, like whatever. And I think we do them very well, you know, and there's something particularly pleasant about that. We like that journey rather than the distilled thing.
Yeah.
But the distilled thing is very brilliant when it's done well. And they do that here. They've got people who do it here spectacularly well. Whether it's Milton Jones or Jimmy Carr or whatever, like whatever, they have a long tradition of people who, you know, will narrow a thing down to a beautiful wordplay kind of thing. Not a pun necessarily, but a wordplay.
Yeah.
And so I think we have that, like whatever. But I don't want to stop us because we enjoy the game of going, well, this is because of our history, or it's because of the famine that we had to tell jokes.
We had to do it.
We had nothing else. We had nothing else at the time. But once the blade fails, what else do we have?
Yes, the prize is small.
It's got. Whereas I'm not sure that's necessarily. You know, it's one of these things. It's like the Irish thing in the age of going, oh, we're music in Ireland. Oh, it's incredible. We have, and they'd named 3 bands, and 3 is a list, and the list feels like proof. And one of the bands was always U2, and there's 2 others who happened to be around the time. And it was like proof of what an incredibly vibrant scene. I'm not sure if we. had
I'm
that
so
much.
glad that you said that, because my main fear about coming on stage today was like, there is nothing more humorless than sitting around talking about why the place you're from is funny and has made you
Yeah,
there's something very dead about that, but like...
And none of us lived there.
And none of us lived there and haven't in a long time.
Yeah, we all moved away, and it wasn't entirely by coincidence. I mean, but yeah. No,
Well, it wasn't because they weren't funny enough.
No. It absolutely wasn't. And it is funny because people said, since other Irish comics have got this kind of heckle, people only laugh because of your accent. And they go, well, they laugh in Ireland as well, where we all have that accent.
No, even in Ireland, we're laughing at your accent.
Oh, for God's sake. Look, it's changed. He's gone Brit. So I'm never sure. I think it's a great reference scheme. I think one of the joys of doing stuff in Ireland is that it's because, it has a cultural homogeneity, like whatever, it's a small country, that we've all lived through certain things, and we have them in common, that when you speak to an Irish audience, you can go a bit like blank, and they'll go, yeah, you're right, twink. And they'll go, with hello to any British people who have no idea what that meant. But so it's really nice to have a joke that really lands in Ireland, which is just specifically about that, because it will really resonate. But I'm not sure if there's anything that we uniquely do. I mean, outside of the
What about you, Caroline?
I think I completely agree with you, and I think that the recent spate of so many Irish celebrities kind of emerging and becoming extremely powerful very quickly. You worked in an article for New York Mag this week where it talked about why are there so many successful Irish people, and I believe they referred to it as the crack pack.
They did, unfortunately.
Which is a joke you need to see written down, otherwise it means
and once you do,
different.
it's still not good news.
It's not good. Yeah, I remember reading it being like, oh God, we're heading for a disaster.
Yeah, because exactly, it's very Celtic Tiger, we're all going to be rich forever language.
Yeah.
It's like, and they said, I mean, look, I was asked, Paul Mescal, Saoirse Ronan, Colin Farrell, everyone's kind of, just loves Irishness, Andrew Scott. And they were talking about actors and filmmakers and authors and everything. I was like, yeah, it is a kind of a boom time, but it's like, the second you say that, that means you're on the teetering brink of possibly a bust. And 3 years from now, we'll all be sitting here talking about Venezuelan being like the most cool nationality to be. But to some extent, Paul Mescal becoming a sex symbol is great for beaky guys like me.
Great for owners of gas shorts.
A rising tide lifts all boats. But I do think there is something in the fact that there is a little moment with Irish writers that you can you're allowed to ride the wave. I think you're allowed to.
Yeah.
And also, even if it becomes, the reasons for it might be a bit faddish. Like it might be some guy in New York saying, we need one of those.
Yeah.
Apostrophe people. Every one of us.
Yeah, we're all quite apostrophe.
Well, you've got your father.
I've got the father. Thank you.
That's a really interesting phenomenon, because I'm definitely experiencing a lot of that, and it's lovely because the way around you want it to be is that Ireland has become incredibly good at investing in the arts, and I think in general the general populace is pretty well read, and isn't the stat that more Irish people go to the cinema than any country in Europe? Yeah, which I guess is more about rain than anything else.
And also all those Paul Mescal films.
Right. But the way around you want it to be is, doesn't Ireland invest in the arts? Aren't they a wonderful culture? Isn't it great? They've produced a lot of people who are good at making stuff. What you don't want, and what you sometimes get, and I'm sure you might as well, is that you're doing well because you're Irish.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when your nationality is your eye color or your date of birth, it's not something you think about ever. And when you are trying incredibly hard, doing gigs for years, writing books for years or whatever, and you see your success kind of explained away by the place you were born, it is it does awaken something the villain in you. I won't.
Well, I mean, Donald Ryan, the villain.
Oh.
Donald Ryan, who was just on the stage before the previous talk, he referenced a review he'd gotten where they slagged off his use of demotic speech, and I love Donald Ryan's writing. I think it's incredible. But the person it was a Huffington Post writer who wrote this big long thing, which was just slagging the book, just saying the worst book ever written, and blah blah blah. And then the last line, apparently according to Donald, was, all he's doing is using the slang and grit of his people. And he was like, that's exactly what I was trying to do. That's great. And I think just
all he's doing is using the slang and grit of his people.
And he was like, I want to use that as a quote on my book.
What a freaky little sentence.
But like, I think that's what an awful lot of, you know, Irish or anyone is only going to write about what they know. And if at the moment people want to hear those stories, like, yeah, I've got them. I want to sell them and not be too like worried if it's not going to be there in a year's time.
God love both of your youth. This is my third Ireland is Hip. Yeah.
What were the first two?
Well, definitely Riverdance is one of them. And God, what was the other one? Oh, I think the U2 stadium thing would have been one. Then the Riverdance was another one. And then now we're all beautiful at now. So I've seen this come and go. And I've been at kind of those government kind of things where they try to get people into rooms to go, well, how can we do this? And they say, as if this wasn't anything other than the moving finger rights and having rip moves on, like the wand happened to land on us briefly for a while, and then it went on to Bollywood because of Slumdog Millionaire, and then it went on to something else, and other things became hip, and then it was pulled pork for a while, and then it was something else, and now it's Paul Mescal, and you know things just pass in and out of like and you have to just keep doing the thing like whatever. So it's great. So, but you have to be really wary of doing. And you're absolutely right. It is frustrating. You go really. Because I've been doing this for a while now. In terms of, is there anything, I occasionally spot the difference I always quote in terms of, are we actually that different? They tend to be very incidental things. One of them is I think I've noticed my wife is English. And if we're on holidays, we'll know if somebody walks past the table at we're away in a hotel in Europe or Asia, whatever, in a family holiday somewhere, and the breakfast where everyone is milling around, a British accent goes past, my wife won't look up, she won't register the fact that they've gone past. If an Irish accent goes past, I will just, and they will, and we'll go, and we won't hang out, but they'll go and just check in, right? And there'll just be a moment of, we're just acknowledging how they're placing you, fine, good, and then we carry on, right? And I thought this, and I would tell people, what I think, look, that's how we are, because we are a club. We have a thing, we're unified by this, we check in with each other, there we go, there's another Irish person there, we find the lovely thing, and what a lovely thing this is. And then in the last year, we got a golden retriever, and every time we bring the dog for a walk, the dog walks out, the dog sees another dog and goes, oh, there's a dog. That's all we are. He's seen the dog many times, but just a dog. And I go, I know it's a dog, let's carry on walking. And we are just golden retrievers, essentially in that regard. But there was a thing that I had a British crew over filming a science thing over in Ireland last year, and they were quite struck by our tendency to mix dark and light very casually. There was a woman beside me in the plane on the way over who said, oh my God, it's yourself. I said, it is. What are you doing? What are you going over for? I said, look, I'm going over for my sister's funeral, but your meeting you was great. She said, I'll tell everyone that, and that'll be a thing, right? And I was telling them, they thought that's really weird.
That's so
and
funny.
then we were in some hotel down in somewhere in Middle Wicklow, some relatively new development in Middle Wicklow, and we were in the bar and we were walking through to somewhere else, and we went through where there was a group of people doing something, and they saw me and said, oh, geez, Dara, come over. And they all came over, and a woman, and I'm not going to, the woman took my arm, and then quietly, as she's getting the photograph, she said, I had a child called Dara now, and he died when he was 7, but I have a website in his honour, and I'm going to put this on the website now. And she passed me, right, Kay Grant. And I said, no, absolutely, well, that's lovely, thank you very much, best luck, whatever. We had that interaction. And then I said this to the British crew, who were like, the fuck is this country? That people, God of us of all ages, not just that people are passing away, but that it's just brought up. And brought up and said, we all go, yeah, absolutely, God, that's awful about the thing dying, and anyhow, like, that was very casually done. And then they were particularly struck because when we flew back, the same woman was on the plane flying back to London who'd been at the funeral, and she said, I told them all about meeting you on the plane. They thought it was hilarious that I met you on the plane, like whatever it's got, at her sister's funeral. But they found that, and I don't know if it's a general thing, but they found that quite the informality of letting the thing go dark. Of letting it be honest or human or natural or all that stuff. The informality of letting that happen, they found that really, really weird. That it would have been a little bit more formal here. I will say that over the last few years, I've done a whole search for my birth parents. It's part of a show, and part of the new show that's coming up, which is available for sale now. The second chapter of that is in the new show. But there was a point where I was ringing somebody who is like a cousin of mine, who I've never spoken to before, and I just ring them up. How are you, Ciara? And she said, how are you, Dara? And I said, and we chat. And I said this to my wife, who's in Yorkshire, and she said, She said, okay, that, I get it now. That works. That is, you could just ring this person up, like whatever.
Yeah.
And I might have been it might not have been. I'm not saying in any way that English people would have reacted any different human way, but there was just we just slipped into a thing really easily. And we slipped into conversations that we could just have. That we're not old friends. It's the first time we ever met these people, even though one of them gave birth to me and the other is my sister and the other is my sister. But we just fell into, I know, sure, look, stop it. And literally I saw them and we're chatting about the ring road in Galway and Galway is very badly designed. And everybody lives on one side of Galway, all the factories on the other side of Galway, and they haven't got a ring road and there's 2 bridges and Jesus, and then they built a pedestrian bridge, for God's sake. This conversation is very capably happening in lieu of how mad is this that I have suddenly appeared in your lives after 50 years. And so that thing, I think, where our informality breaks that. And that may be why comedy, look, they're funny. They're funny stories to tell. Yeah. It's grand, and you can tell those human stories of a thing. I'm not saying, and that's ridiculous to say that we're the owners of human emotion, and English people you don't have love, and that's like whatever. That's nonsense. Of course, it's not there. But there is that kind of thing, I think. But I'm always very, very wary of generalising too much in these situations, like whatever, because there are souls in Ireland as well, and people you don't want to be a thing. But it is that kind of thing. We have, I think, an informality.
Wow, Carnan, have you had any such interactions on a plane?
Not on that plane, no. But I had a dinner there recently with 2 Irish women, and not to bring the tone away. I mean, this is all part of it, I suppose. But between the 2 of them, they'd had 4 miscarriages in the last year, and one of them said, I know, yeah. She did the Irish female inward breath of tragedy. And what she did was she was like, sure, I used to get time off school for my periods, and now I get work off for my miscarriages. So it's actually great. And it was so pitch black, and I was like, this is awful. It was just, and like the laughing in that room was just so. It just felt so good because it felt like so stolen from the ether, and it was just so. Well, so taboo, yeah.
Joel Morris is a great writer on matters of comedy. He wrote a book called Be Funny or Die.
Yeah.
And in it, and very early on, he says the best and purest type of joke that he could ever think of. He thought about it, what could be just the best essence of the greatest feeling that a joke can give you. And he said it's a joke quietly spoken between 2 siblings at a funeral.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
And I was like, oh, right, yeah. Because, I think that's a thing which everyone has experienced, that sort of, oh, Jesus, it's my father had his leg amputated, this is a true story, and I was diabetes, he wasn't in a bomb or anything. I have to clarify that sometimes, because he's in the IRA. Also not true. So I'd been in Dublin studying, and I heard about this, so I obviously got on a bus and was going on. I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy, and this is like such a huge thing. And my brother had flown over from London where he was, and he was like, just looking after things, and him and his wife. He was like pulling dinner out of the oven when I got to the house. I'd come all the way from the bus station. I was like, so like, how's Daddy? What's going on? And he was pulling a big chicken out of the oven. He says, he's grand. He wants the other leg off. And I think I laughed and cried for like 5 straight minutes, because it was exactly what I needed at that moment, was something so ludicrous. Literally the idea that my father, far from not enjoying having his leg cut off, he enjoyed it so much that he was now lobbying for his good leg to also be removed. But that's something that I race toward, I suppose, in writing and in just company, is that feeling, that sort of sacred, blasphemous.
Yeah, and because I think we are pitched next to 2 societies, or between 2 societies, which are more formal. Even though they may not feel it. Here is, or certainly has a formal element to it, like whatever, and they can, whether by class or by rules of society, more so. America has that politeness kind of thing with the, that kind of sheen of, that kind of like, it is, honestly, it's my least favorite laugh is Americans in a lift, where you go, have you pressed the button? It's not fucking funny. Nothing funny. nothing funny happening there. Stop laughing at that, like whatever, it's crap. Where just anything is like consumed by that thing. And so we need to, like that, cut through that, like whatever, kind of, we just can't do that, like whatever, find it really fidgety and weird. And there are things I'm at which are very kind of, well, this is how we do things. And I'm like going, oh no, Jesus Christ, there's no need for that. Like this is weirdly, you know, we don't do lords and earls and dukes and all that kind of stuff, like whatever, and it's not on our priorities to be princes and all that, like whatever. That none of that is. We wouldn't have any. That just seems weird and strange and unnecessarily formal. It's good that we can sort of define ourselves in opposition to those. As being the people who just like go, for fuck's sakes, you know, let's just do the thing, for God's sake, like whatever. There's no reason to be fanning around with these kind of structures, like whatever. And so, but look, all comedy essentially is you're breaking attention. The release you're getting is attention is built and you're letting it out. Even the person shouting, "Come on, Tim," at Wembley, who gets a laugh because the audience are like on the edge of their seats, and then somebody interrupts that and they go, "Ha ha ha," because tension is broken. And all we're trying to do is ape that process in what we write, is to create a tension that we then release ourselves. Me immediately, you a year later in the reader. Malcolm, I don't know how you do it and why you do it. It's great. But so all we're trying to do that. So I think maybe in that regard we're naturally we don't like the formality, and so we want to break that.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that you have done it 4 times, the writing an actual book type book.
Yeah.
So when you are doing that, you said it's difficult, but what is your process? I mean, are you just kind of like
in writing a book?
Are you? Is it so different from performing stand-up or from coming up with the jokes for stand-up that it's almost a different animal? Or
yeah. I mean, like I believe you should write to the medium that it's going to be consumed in anyway. So you have to write to the page when you write to the page. It's just literally putting every word down. I'm miming typing here. Literally, I'm sitting. Not this library, actually interesting. The Welcome Library, much better library for writing it, and just quieter, nicer vibe. Anyway, it's grand, lovely cafeteria. Just down the road. But it's great. I'm not trying to push you all out of the British Library. I'm sure it's great work. It's fantastic. It's that weird tower of books in the middle. But that thing of actually, like even that, going to a place to do 3 hours of stuff. That's not how you write stand-up. You sit in a room, you maybe have a drink because it knocks you slightly off yourself. You talk to yourself, you walk around, you're kind of reacting things. You're going, is that like you pour through anything amusing that's happened in your own life, and you try to just talk it up. And so it's very featherlight as a thing. It's very there's no heft to it until you actually then do it, and then you go in front of, and then you immediately put it in front of an audience, and you write down all these. No, that's half an idea. There's an idea, whatever. And then in the seconds before doing it, you go, "Fuck me, that's not an idea. That's not an idea. Okay, that one, I'll try that one." And then you try it in front of an audience, and that instantly crystallizes it. So it's really
do you find that now, like, do the stakes feel higher or lower because, like, you're now at a level of, like, you're very well known. Don't know if you know this.
I hadn't known.
But that, like, the people who are coming to your shows, they're so already, like, bought and sold into the Dara Briain project that you're like, do you have a feeling of, like, are they laughing because it's me or are they laughing because it's
I don't think you get that much leeway. I think you get the nightmare is that you leave to a smaller round of applause than you came on to. So you come onto the applause of everything you've done in the past, you leave to what they've just seen, and so you want to actually sustain that. So there's that, but that's not a bad. That's a good thing to have that pressure. And also in the little gigs, no, because there is literally an industry of small gigs around London and around the UK, to be honest, of work in progress shows. Edinburgh has now a really solid chunk of it is work in progress, where people know, look, this is not finished and honed and done. So I'm going to try this out. I will literally hand a notepad to somebody in the front row and give them a pen and go, look, a thing might pop into my head, you write it down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so there's pages of it. And I have to give 2 things I say to them. Firstly, you're not a stenographer. You don't have to write everything down because people
just something random. Totally
just a punch in the random.
Like you appoint an intern for the show.
Essentially, yes. Yeah. And that's right.
Giving them a lot of orders as well. You see
I'm trying to liberate them to enjoy them, but I do say, look, and occasionally I'll go, and a bit will happen, I'll go, write that down, and they'll write it down, and that will be how it jumps on. That's the leap of it doing it. Because the best analogy for writing for comedy I ever saw was Douglas Adams when he wrote about flying. He said that the way to learn to fly, it's in the 4th book of the increasingly poorly named Hitchhiker trilogy, is Arthur Dent learns how to fly, and what it is, you fall and forget you're falling. And then you find that you're hovering, you're flying, like whatever, and that's how you learn to fly. It's in the book, like whatever. And I think that's deliberately meant as a reference to comedy, which is you set the thing in motion and then you stop thinking about it and you hope that the part of your brain that spits these things out, which is why I enjoy doing the off-the-cuff stuff, because you're panicking so much, there's no rational thought happening, but you're just grabbing associations and then committing to the association immediately, and then going, fine, well, I mean, there's a clip I saw of a charity gig in recently where a guy I said to a guy something about, oh, what do you do? You're a psychoanalyst at the, and he goes, I said something, and I said, oh, that's probably deserves analysis, and the guy went like that, and I said, what the fuck kind of analysis are you? This is what you give your patients? I don't know. And it somehow became me miming him behind his patient as the patient lay in the couch, just leaning in, going, I fucking got you sussed. I fucking knew the minute you walked in, I know you, I know the problem, I'm not telling you. And doing it, because I thought, okay, that'll be a funny thing to do with him, to mean that he's a really threatening psychoanalyst who's just dragging it out week after week, even though he knows what it is. But you commit to it and you go for it. And so none of those are usable again. None of those are either. Yeah. But like there is an element of, it's the panic that does it. It's the blind panic is where the line comes from. How you do it without the panic, I don't know. Like there's God, you're in a room. Like
I mean, I suppose I should ask you: have you ever done stand-up, or would you ever be tempted to do stand-up?
No, I do feel like I have the best of both worlds because I do have a podcast, and then there's a huge market for some reason of podcast tours. So we do a live podcast for Sentimental Garbage, which is kind of about pop culture, but we have this sort of interaction with the audience thing where it's like everybody puts into a garbage can the piece of culture that they are sort of slightly ashamed of. Séamas actually came on and he did Grease 2.
One of the great films.
To give you one of the great films. And like we sort of have to come up with sort of like, I did this on stage with the Marion Keys at Edinburgh. I just like have like 2 minute sort of like takes on what.
Oh, that's good.
And it's not
user-generated content.
Exactly, and it's not necessarily a joke format or whatever, but it is that sort of moment of panic of being like, oh my God, the Gilmore Girls, what kind of thing, or Grease 2 or whatever it is. And like I do find that like I often think the thing about any kind of creative career is that you have to like every single part of the job. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. Because if you talk about being a novelist, for example, you have to pretty much at base like being alone for 6 hours a day, and talking to yourself. And you have to like the publicity, you have to like the marketing, you have to be interested in the cover, you have to be interested in the social media. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up for like a miserable life that is very spurious in how it rewards you. And like being on stage and like giving people like a sort of a quick fire take that is completely panic fueled on Neighbours, do you know what I mean, or something, is the kind of most exciting my job ever gets. But the idea of stand up is still no.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of, you're absolutely right. You have to like the travel, you have to like the backstage area, you have to like the fact, you have to like the fact that you're going to have to do a lot of stuff online to build up an audience, whatever it takes now to do it. You have to be willing to take that stuff on board. I remember meeting a guy on the street, and I have a thing that if I meet somebody who's a stand-up, I'm very pro, good for you, great, you're in the club, that's great. If you're standing in front of people, you have taken that, whatever that weird psychological choice it was to look for love here. And I think, but it was a guy in Cork who said, yeah, look, I've done it. How do I get to the next bit? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. He said, yeah, but I've done the gigs and I've done stuff like whatever, but how do I get into
Where's my DVD?
Yeah, essentially. And I'm going, no. That's it. You just do this. Like you just do this. You do more and more of this, and then maybe something happens. But doing this is the thing you're happy to drive 5 hours to Halifax to do 20 minutes of it, and then drive back again, or whatever that we used to do when you're doing the circuit. The thing that the bit where you're there in front of people, that should be so amazing. And it's kind of weird. You do meet people who go, oh, I never enjoyed it. And you're going, don't do it.
Yeah, then great, like leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I also think that's for a lot of creative people. They're generally got that way because they were useless at any kind of physical activity when they were children or teenagers. And so going on stage to promote your book or at the back of a bookshop or whatever is the closest thing to athleticism you ever get. Because like the heart is going, your knees are
there's an element of it feels like dancing. There's an element of when you're on stage and it's going well and thump, it is you know, all eyes are on you and you're moving and you're not really, I stand completely still. But in my head, I am swaying around there and I'm drawing them up and I'm dropping them down, I'm lifting them, I'm doing that, like whatever. I'm not doing any of that, actually, but it feels like it. And then the other thing, I'm sorry, this is nothing to do with the comedy thing per se, is there is also a point where you're doing a live event.
It's very meta, us doing a live event.
Yeah.
Live event.
But if it goes well, you think that was the centre of the universe on that night. And you walk out really feeling sorry for anyone who wasn't in that room on that night. Because the thing happened, and did you not see that? Oh, no. People who saw that, man, what a thing we had, like whatever. And that's the beauty of the live thing, that it just feels like the whole universe shrinks down to that point where it's you and that crowd and doing the thing, like whatever. But again, sorry, it's the... I suppose the question is, do you therefore then do different comedy when you're writing it for live to when you're writing it for a book?
You must do. You have to, because it's got to be different. It's a different impulse and it's a different reaction or a mechanism of reward.
If you look at the structure of a joke that you might have in stand-up, where you make an observation, you know, and this sounds hacky, but you see a thing, you set it up, you twist the thing, and then you have and then you play with what you've created from that. So you a lot of stuff like whatever. I'll give a random example. I've done many TV shows. The TV show I've never done is Who Do You Think You Are, which exists both in the UK and Ireland. And one of the reasons is that it's well known within the industry that 50% of the time when they do Who Do You Think You Are, they'll do some preliminary research into the guests that they've booked. And then they'll find out there's nothing there. There's no great narrative in their family history, like whatever. And then they have to go to a celebrity and go, look, you, the life if I had to do the show about you, what a show it would be. But your family, nothing. I mean, it's literally dung farmers the entire way down the line, nothing. And that would be the case for me. The Briains, just labourers on the railways in Bray, like whatever. My mother's family, the Himmlers, again, nothing. No stories, no paperwork. It's very strange. I remember saying I said to my grandmother, Großmutter Himmler, I said, warum are there no documents or photographs? And she looked at me and said, what is with all the questions? You're always asking questions. We are simple farming people from County Mayo. So I should have been standing for that. That was clearly a bit. But it is that structure of that's a true story about that, like whatever, about how 50% of the people don't do it, which I tell them, and then let's fuck around with it, Himmlers, and then the bit that actually makes it the joy is the Großmutter Himmler, when you take the idea and then run with it, right, okay, which I'm not sure if you get the luxury to do
on the page.
On the page, yeah, the scrap, because you can have the thing, like whatever, same me, the Himmlers, right? And then you're going, fuck, am I going to write out the dialogue of my grow with the outcast? I'm not going to do the accent, I'm not going to do the, or whatever the thing is in the joke. Whereas we look for the things in order to play, in order to create a thing on top of that, in order to mess around with it, the act out, as it's often known, like whatever. You do the act out of the idea. I'm not sure to what extent you can do that on the page. You
can do other things, though, I suppose. You can have... Flann O'Brien's very good at making funny lists, for example.
Yeah.
Where the rhythm of it kind of goes and goes and goes and goes. And that's kind of hard I think I would find that hard to do in performance. But really, performance does seem like it gives you a lot more wiggle room. And also for improvisation, or for getting an extra added laugh from a look, or a glance, or a tiny spin on an accent. I always envy that. Yeah. And that's why I was so adamant that I was going to read the audiobook, because from little experiences of having my work read by other people, really talented people, there's just like 20% you lose. Because how could they possibly be as familiar with it? And also, they don't do as good an impression of my dad.
Well, we need that.
Fair enough.
I should say, by the way, there is time for questions, and I always forget this every time I do these things. So, if anyone does have a question, you can stick your hand up, but we'll keep going.
The book that most closely resembles the book from the canon that most closely resembles a stand-up show is 3 Men in a Boat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and if you've read 3 Men in a Boat, 3 Men in a Boat is loosely pegged around the journey that the three of them did with the dog down the river, but is just vignette, 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 and the vignettes are are standard routines about his uncle nailing a painting up, like whatever. So it is, and you do really go, yeah, this is. You'd have done this in Edinburgh. If this is 100 years later, Jerome would have been on a poster going. Like standing with a stick and a bit of a bow going, boat times with Jerome K. Jerome, Pleasance Courtyard, and it would have been that.
It'd be Bodie McBoatface or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And so it would have been that, because it is just a routine, sustained routine, like which I'm not saying.
But equally, there's no world in which Adrian Mole, for example, would make sense as a stand-up, because the whole the comedy that's happening, Adrian Mole, other than the amazing writing, is the fact that there's a sort of a private knowledge that's happening between the book and the reader of we know this kid is sort of a loser, and you know he sort of has all these delusions of grandeur or whatever, and he's writing to the BBC every week, and he takes himself so deeply seriously, and there's kind of an invisible realm of comedy that's not necessarily happening on the page, but it's happening just in your brain. That is just masterful and can't really happen anywhere else.
Plus, you're reading it in a diary format, so I suppose you're reading it in a book format, and that would be impossible. That'd be clunking to ape on stage, so I think there's an element of that, like whatever. I mean, look, they both do. You write to the thing that it's in, I suppose, like whatever the director. But it's to us in terms of whether we have just the luxury of we don't have to work half as hard, and then we can play when we do it, like whatever.
But it is interesting because so much of stand up at the moment, I'm observing. I'm not a comedian, but this trend for more storytelling, less punchline heavy jokes.
Full hours that are over an overarching experience or trauma or just a life story. That's kind of, you're right, it feels much
the kind
more
of one-person show / stand-up comedy hour is sort of blending more together.
Memoirist kind of comedies.
Hey, I'm literally on my second adoption show, so I'm well aware of the move. Yes, it was. Edinburgh started with those kind of the Dead Dad show was one of those movies where the people would write a show. Look, all stand-up is essentially the movement of time, changing of time. People, because we turn things over. So it's like there's turning 30, turning 40, turning 50, parents, all the landmarks. We all at some point could do a show about the various different landmarks. But it has become more open to that kind of long form storytelling. But even then, within that, if I were to write, I mean, the laughs you get out of are slightly different. I would say that the biggest laugh in the adoption story was there's a point where I tell the story of trying to find the paperwork about mother, and then eventually getting a thing from TUSLA, the Irish agency, to this, and then I stand on stage and I take out this piece of paper and can I even pretend do the mime of how I do it? Sorry, let me do it. And I take out the piece of paper, let's have a sheet of paper in front of me, and I go and I receive this thing at the bottom. It just said, and I take the piece of paper and I read out, your mother was 23 years old. She worked as this person, blah, 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 blah. Your father was this, blah, blah. And I read out these bare biographical details that you get from the Irish government on that sheet that they have. And there's absolute silence in the room. And I said, I know what you're thinking, because all audiences are thinking this at exactly the same moment. And it is, the glasses are new. It is absolutely my I honestly think it's the only real joke I've ever written, because it's the perfect, the tension, and then and the glasses just drops the tension entirely.
So
and every night it was this panic of fuck me, make sure I've got the glasses, because it's such a nice line to do, whatever. I'd like to act noble about it, but the fucking glee I had every night.
You should get a Peabody Award just for the glasses.
Just for the glasses are new, and that is it's a totally different laugh to any other thing. It is just a theatrical tension laugh, whatever it's called. So sorry, Polly, but you can do that in a thing. Yeah.
I'm just coming to the idea that stand-ups are cheats, and they get to do all these things that we don't get to do.
Yeah,
yes.
But we get something even more precious, which is passive income.
That's true. On that, is there any questions in the audience? Do I get to choose? I'll choose.
I'll choose.
Man with glasses.
I just noticed that it's been transcribed here, and they're taking out all the swear words. And I just thought it was interesting. First of all, I was tempted to add loads of swear words into the question to see what happened. But then also, whether you feel restrained when you're doing kind of mainstream kind of writing in papers or appearing on sort of the BBC. Do you think you're kind of restrained by not being able to swear?
I actually try to swear a little bit more these days. I have a column for the Irish Examiner, and I just realised that I kind of had been stopping myself from it, so I just put a few in, and they just get through. I think maybe they're just asleep at the switch. I mean, I'm very low maintenance, so I haven't encountered too much. I mean, in terms of, if you're on Radio 4 in the middle of the day, I'm not effing and blinding. I don't really swear that much generally anyway. Kind of. My wife is laughing there. But yeah, I don't feel particularly constrained. I think usually getting around it, you can come up with something funnier. But for an actual impact, especially in a live event, I think it's great.
Yeah, my sort of struggle with this is that I write half for sort of adult literary fiction where you can do whatever you want, and half for teenagers, right? And so the thing about writing for teenagers is often the stakes have to be incredibly high. It's like it's life or death stuff. It's people getting dragged into the hell by the occult. Like it's like stuff where naturally a person would be swearing. And so the first draft, it's like you could never, like as my publisher would say, that'll never go in Walmart. And and you must always think about Walmart when you're on an artistic journey. And so you have to keep combing through the draft again and again and again to make a sort of an atmosphere that's full of like villainy and stakes and life and death, but also no one is swearing, which is like I think for any artist of any kind, having guardrails up actually leads to more creativity rather than less, unless it's like the Hays Code or something. But like yeah.
I love swearing. I swear a lot. I swear a lot on stage, and I wanted to have T-shirts printed on stage that said "fuck props up bad writing," and that because it's really good. It's an amplifier, and it has never lost its power.
So people say that usually as a negative, but you're like, it's
negative.
Great that it does that.
Like, man, this is bad writing. He said, yeah, but it just it works. And there's nothing. I'm sorry. This is the universe. It is. This is how it works. It is. I think it's a very, very powerful thing. And I don't. Well, if you use it less, if you use it more, I can't to be getting with that stuff. I also think there is an element, we're back again to informality versus formality, and I think that we will do it more than people here do it. And there are words we use, certainly with Americans, there are words we use very casually that Americans would not use at all. And yeah, long may that continue. I think we have, there was a line that Diane Kitson had said, yes, well, I have the same vocabulary as you, except I also have swear words. So therefore, I have a bigger vocabulary because I have those words. So I think there's a touch of it. Yeah, but there is an element of like certain times of day, certain times of place you have to be. I mean, I started doing stand-up and kids TV at the same time 30 years ago. So I already had the switch in the head of like, you got to change your tone depending on the.
Did anything ever slip out? Anything ever slip out? Was it Echo Island?
No, Echo Island. No, it never went that way. But occasionally you'd be. People go, weren't you on, like in the clubs, it'd be more weird. They go, weren't you like doing a thing with pets? It's like 2 hours ago. And I go, yes, I was, and now I'm here.
Speaking Irish to a parrot.
Speaking Irish to a parrot. It was a cockatoo. It's grand. Sadly, no longer with us.
They lived for a while, or did you have something to do
We
with
did
it?
3 years with the cockatoo. It's called Rocco the Cockatoo. First year, every link was, and Rocco's with us, and Rocco. By year 3, we got so bored, and the cockatoo would just be wandering in the back of the set, go, Ma! We go, that fucking thing's still here.
It hasn't done a segment in like 2.5 years. It's just sitting there.
We just forgot. And the guy would come in all the time with the bird and leave the bird there, and we'd like, okay, we've done the bird thing. Yeah, it's grand. Sorry, that doesn't really answer your question. It's grand.
Anyone else? Someone just there? Oh.
Hi, yes, to go back to Dara's point about the fact that you can't, you were saying you can't run with something on the page. And I'm going to kind of slightly challenge that and think, can't you run with something on the page? And you mentioned Sedaris early on. It made me think of Me Talk Pretty Someday, which I think does it brilliantly and so successfully. But I wonder, maybe not for all readers. Perhaps you need to be able to hear all those accents in your head, but interested in whether you feel you can run things on the page.
I think that is a really good point, is sort of homophony, whenever you hear actual things. Occasionally, when I see an accent spelled out on the page, we're getting into super like pet peeves here, it has to be done perfectly, otherwise it falls flat to me. And also, if you imagine if you maybe have multiple accents, I mean, it's a very specific example, but I don't know, sometimes you just think of all of the hurdles you have to get over to get across exactly what you mean, when literally you could just stand on a stage and make the noise with your mouth. And it feels so annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you have the same thing.
Well, what's interesting about David Starr specifically is he actually did come from a performance spoken word tradition. And so like all of his, I mean, he's mastering both stand-up comedy and passive income, which is that he does these theatre shows and he performs his stories before they're even committed to paper, which I think is fascinating.
Yes,
but me and my husband have this argument all the time about like whether or not accent comedy is like quote unquote allowed kind of thing. And we were in the pub talking about this with a friend, and the friend said, if the accent is from a G7 economy, it's okay. And then Gav kind of came back with, so what you're saying to me is that if a country is poorer than the country I come from, what's going to make it worse is me doing a little voice. Like, it's just like the kind of, yeah, I don't know. I'm a very much a pro-accent comedy person.
I am, I mean, I obviously have in my head a totem pole of like what is allowed and what isn't.
Yeah.
But I do an Italian accent when I cook for my son that would probably land me in The Hague. And I just don't know if I'm ever going to stop it, but, you know.
Yeah.
There is a line that I'm doing literally at the moment between the debate between whether you punch up in comedy and then people call you woke, or you punch down and people cancel you and you become a millionaire and go onto Netflix. And my bit on it, apologies, this was bad language, is I go, I am the only comedian who punches across. I only tell jokes about countries that have broadly the same GDP and population as Ireland and the same rough standing in the UN Quality of Life Index. So basically, fuck the Portuguese. That never quite gets the round of applause that did there, because it then becomes a thing about like, what's with the little cakes, Joe? A sustained bit about natas. But it is, yeah, I'm not saying, by the way, you can't do that. I'm saying you may, as a writer, feel constrained in the way that the whole point for stand-up is to get to establish an idea and then go off and be silly with it. Like, and you have the audience's indulgence is your only thing that you're doing right there, like whatever. And that must be just more difficult if you set up a comic idea and then go, well, how long can I drag this out for before the reader goes, yeah, we get it. We get that your granny was not in a nasty, whatever. How long can I do that? Whereas we can drag it out.
And precisely to your point, the reason that someone like David Sedaris like is so exhilaratingly funny when he's like absolutely cooking is because there is that sense of, God, that's a very hard thing to put across or to make it sing in that way.
Yeah. It's also that thing of like, you know, the way that you get a lot of comedy actors who then become great dramatic actors. I think you also get a lot of comedy writers who have great dramatic moments. Like there's a part in one of his, in that collection, I think his best collection, it's called Calypso, where he talks about his sister who dies and who had like a lot of like mental struggles throughout her life. He talks about a time when he's playing a theatre show and doing a signing afterwards, and the sister is trying to get in through, like, because she's kind of, she's heard about he's going to be in town. He hasn't told her she's in town, and then he instructs the security guard to keep her out. And the idea that somebody would commit that to paper about themselves, that sister who then died.
It's the last time he saw her as well.
Yeah, that's the last time he saw her was when he was asking his security to have her escorted from the venue. And the idea that you would share that with millions of readers is probably the most brave thing I can think. I mean, like, but also it speaks to like a truth of like, yeah, everyone in this room has done something hideous to someone they love, you know, and to have one person who's most known for his Christmas elf story to tell you that, I think is like, it's like a breathlessly good gift, you know, to art.
Do you feel an obligation, by the way, to be serious? To leave the door open, to be, I mean, because it is, you're right, it is an interesting training, but do you feel a sense of, oh, I'm not, you know, if I'm, that this, you know, this puts me in a box if I'm just known for writing funny, that, and I'd like not to be just in a box, I'd like to also,
Well, thank you for asking, and like so my latest book, which has the one that's getting the most praise for being funny, is sort of a soap opera about reproductive rights in Ireland kind of thing. And you know, it's sold very well internationally, and like I've had so many people coming up to me being like, even though for me the Repeal the Eighth movement was, I feel like, a huge part of who I am as an adult person, like how it made me and how I see the world, that there are still so many people who did not know, and that we didn't have reproductive rights in Ireland until incredibly recently. And then I'm having these conversations with American women about the rights they have just had taken from them. And we're having this incredible, and I'm like, we're really holding each other kind of thing. And I kind of think to myself, wow, I would never have been able to have a book that travels this far if it weren't funny. So I've just sort of...
Oh, that's interesting.
It's like the paper airplane kind of thing.
Because the Blast show, the Adoption show, a lot of people go, oh, I think it's the best show because it had other emotions in it, and I accept that. And people go, oh, and people got a lot of praise for the show, like whatever, even though the story very much presented itself to me. And I know how to tell a story because I've done this on stage a lot, like whatever. But there's a large part of me going, yeah, but the more difficult ones to write were the ones that were just jokes. The ones that were just routine, were actually properly, Christ, what am I going to do there, and there, as opposed to this true story, which is a great true story, but the actual, it's very sweet that people liked it, but like there's also an element of like, you just love being able to say, I liked it when you're serious. Let's see more. And you're going, yeah, but really, I'd like to just write funny, because that is the really difficult thing to do, to create like a sustainedly very funny thing for 2 hours on stage, which is...
It's very difficult. No one should do it, especially not in competition with any of us. That is a good place to leave it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.